Hello, welcome back to my channel. And if we want to understand culture, we need to know what culture is. So, what is culture anyway? There are many definitions about culture, and we want to listen today to one definition from the anthropologist Paul Hebert. We will define culture as a more or less integrated system of feelings, ideas and values and their associated patterns of behavior and products shared by a group of people who organize and regulate what they think, feel and do. So we can say culture is a set of shared, invisible rules and beliefs. First of all, we need to see that culture is learned. So you're not born with a culture, it's learned. And also culture is shared. We share the culture with another in our society. The other thing is that culture is dynamic. Culture can change, it doesn't stay the same way. Culture is organized by our society. Gerd Hofstede said, well, culture is the software of the mind. So it means how people relate to each other and how our society functions together. So we can say people are influenced by their own culture, by their cultural practices and by their walk of the daily basis, by their getting together and share the common values and common behavior and common beliefs. It may be consciously or it may be unconsciously. So let's look at a few elements of culture. There are values, norms and beliefs. There are also expressions of culture, which is language and maybe symbols. So the elements of culture are different across the different cultures. Values, for example, are culturally defined standards of what is good or desirable. We judge others by their behavior and by their own values. This is ethical behavior or the ethical behavior system. There are also norms. Norms are culturally defined expectations of behavior. What is appropriate behavior and what is inappropriate? There are laws, there are unwritten rules. So there are norms in our cultures. There's also belief and belief systems. So a belief is something that is accepted or considered in the culture of what is true and what is false. So we all believe something, there are belief systems. There can be religious belief systems or other belief systems. And also when we look at culture, there are different expressions of culture. First we have, of course, the language. The language is a system of words and symbols used to communicate with other people, and there's also body language and there are facial expressions and so on. So it's not just the words, so we communicate with a lot of different things. So there is the language, but there are also expression of culture are symbols. So there are many symbols in our culture today that are used for something that stands for something else. For example, so we know all logos. Logos surround us all over. There are crosses, religious signs, or different other religious signs. There are traffic signs. These are symbols that communicate and tell us how to behave and what to do with it and how to be proper in a different or in a specific situation. Other expressions are, for example, art in painting or in sculptures. Literature, for example, is another expression, but also our lifestyle is an expression of culture. When we talk about culture, so very often people say, well, there's not just one culture, and which is true. In one culture there can be several subcultures, or there can be countercultures. So culture, as we said, is not static. In one part of a country it can be like this, and in another part of a country it can look a little bit like this. So even in one country there can be different subcultures. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about monoculture. So a lot of people today say, well, okay, we have a monoculture because mainly the younger folks, well, they listen to the same music, they wear the same sneakers and so on, and there's a monoculture developing today through the internet and through the net. But on the surface, it might look like a monoculture. We need to understand that deep down, kind of, there are different cultures. Monoculture is maybe just on the surface, but deep down there is a culture that really has formed us, the culture we grew up with, and the culture that has really formed our values and our beliefs and our thinking. So, as Hofstede said, the culture is the software of the mind. It's the organization of our society. It is how we function, it is how we think, it is how we understand things. And if you cross cultures, if you go into a different culture, it may look totally different than my culture. And very often the problem is that I judge the other cultures by what I have learned and how I grew up. And I compare it, and then I compare the values, my values, with the values in the culture, and then I start criticizing. So we need to understand that culture is not necessarily right or wrong. It's a system I grew up in, and it's a system that made me understand other people, the society, and the world. If you liked what you have heard right now, subscribe to the channel and give me a thumb up, and come back later and see, and let's discover together culture, other cultures, and how to behave and live in different cultures. Thank you very much. Bye.